What if everything we thought we knew about God's throne was only the outer court? In Revelation, John sees a throne, but it isn't floating in abstract space. It's surrounded by elders, living creatures, a sea of glass, wheels full of eyes. Ezekiel sees it too, but not as a fixed object. It moves, it blazes, it breathes fire and sees everything. This is no stationary seat of power. It is the nucleus of a vast living geography, where time bends, judgment proceeds, and the glory of God erupts like thunder. This isn't mythology. It's the unseen architecture of the universe. Welcome to the throne room, behind the veil. Before time wore names and space had boundaries, there existed a throne, not as a cold celestial seat, but as the living epicenter of all that would ever be. John, the beloved apostle, exiled on the Isle of Patmos, was caught up in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and what he saw was not a dream. It was an unveiling. A door stood open in heaven, and a voice like a trumpet summoned him, not forward, but upward, into a realm where the visible trembled before the eternal. There, at the very center of all things, stood a throne. But this was no ornament of royalty. It blazed, it thundered, lightning shot forth from its core, and from beneath it, voices roared like waves colliding with fire. Around the throne were 24 smaller thrones, and seated upon them were elders robed in white, wearing crowns of gold. They did not rule, they worshipped. They rose and fell like tides before the glory that stood before them. But even this was not the heart of the mystery. For what John beheld was echoed centuries earlier by another prophet, exiled not to an island, but to the banks of a river, Ezekiel, the son of a priest who in the land of Babylon saw the heavens split open. And what he saw was not stillness, but storm. A whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud with fire enfolding itself and a brightness around it. Within the fire, 4 living creatures appeared, beings not bound by natural law, with 4 faces each, 4 wings, legs like burning bronze, and movement like flashes of lightning. But beneath them were wheels, wheels within wheels, turning in unison, their rims full of eyes, seeing in every direction. They did not turn when they moved, for their motion obeyed the Spirit. Wherever the Spirit would go, they went, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels, and above them stretched a firmament, dazzling like crystal, and above the firmament there it was, the throne. A sapphire in fire, a canopy of authority above flame and awareness, and on the throne, a figure like that of a man, brilliant like molten metal from the waist up, and burning like fire from the waist down. Radiance surrounded him like a rainbow in the clouds on a day of rain. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord, and when Ezekiel saw it, he fell face down. This was not the imagination of 2 dreamers. It was the Spirit revealing the architecture of the unseen, a revelation that the throne of God does not dwell in distant stillness, but rides upon the living framework of reality itself. It is not a place, it is the place. It is not a seat, it is the source. The throne of God moves because God is not confined. His authority flows with purpose, riding on judgment, mercy, time, and flame. The throne moves across realms unseen, through dimensions uncharted by science or shadowed by time. It is not an accessory of heaven, it is heaven's core. When it moves, angels follow, stars respond, and ages shift. The movement of the throne is not aimless. It is the mechanism by which divine will is administered, judgment is released, and glory is made known. Its wheels are not metal, they are alive. Covered in eyes, they witness all things. They are not steered by reins, but by the Spirit Himself. When the throne turns, destinies realign. When it rises, kings fall. When it rests, peace reigns. The ancients understood this. In Jewish tradition, the throne is called the Merkava, the chariot-throne, the mobile presence of the Almighty. David sang of it, declaring, "He rides on the wings of the wind." The psalmist cried, "Clouds and thick darkness surround him. Fire goes before him." This is not poetry. It is a description of a throne that breathes, that burns, that sees. When Moses approached the burning bush, he stood before the edges of the throne's shadow. When fire and cloud descended on Mount Sinai, Israel trembled before the throne's arrival. When the temple was filled with smoke and no priest could stand to minister, it was because the throne had entered. And when Jesus, the Son of Man, stood before the Sanhedrin and declared, "You will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven," he was not speaking in metaphor. He was declaring the throne's return to earth. The throne that moves has moved before. It moves toward judgment and moves toward mercy. It moved toward Egypt in 10 plagues. It moved through the wilderness as fire by night and cloud by day. It moved into the temple when Solomon dedicated it with blood and prayer. It moved into the womb of a virgin when the Word became flesh. And it will move again, for Revelation declares that one day the heavens will open and the rider on the white horse will come, faithful and true, and on his robe and thigh will be written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He does not ride alone. The armies of heaven follow him. And he rides from the same throne Ezekiel saw burning in Babylon and John saw blazing on Patmos. This is no throne of marble or gold. This is the eternal machinery of glory, the place from which all decrees go forth and all creation finds its source. The throne that moves is a terrifying hope. Terrifying because it is holy. Hopeful because it moves toward redemption. It is not distant, it is approaching, and every lightning flash, every rumble of its wheels, every voice that cries from within it is the announcement of something drawing near. The throne is not fixed in a distant heaven. It is alive, present, and in motion. And the question is not if we will see it. The question is, will we be ready when it arrives? Encircling the living fire of the throne are 24 thrones, each bearing a figure clothed in white and crowned with gold, seated not in idleness but in honor, not as decoration but as declaration. These are the elders of redemption, the 24 witnesses to a covenant completed and a promise fulfilled. They do not represent angels, for angels do not wear crowns of reward nor robes of righteousness. These are not beings of fire and wind, but of flesh made glorified, the image of the redeemed lifted into rule. 12 from before the cross, sons of Abraham, patriarchs of a nation formed in the wilderness and guided by fire. And 12 from after the cross, apostles of the Lamb, those who walked with him, who bled for him, who bore his name to the nations. Together they form a circle of testimony, the full number of divine covenant, the old and the new, law and grace, shadow and substance, now enthroned around the source of all glory. Their garments are not earned, but gifted, washed in the blood of the Lamb, radiant not by merit, but by mercy. And their crowns, symbols of victory, tokens of endurance through trial, are not worn in pride, but cast down in worship. For when the throne roars, when the creatures cry, "Holy," when the thunder speaks and the lightning flashes, these elders fall on their faces and lay down their crowns, not as those defeated, but as those overwhelmed by a glory far greater than reward. This act is not symbolic, it is sacred. The casting of crowns is the eternal acknowledgement that no authority stands beside God's and no victory exists apart from His grace. Yet they are not silent. Scripture does not record their speeches, but their very posture speaks. Seated around the throne, they reflect that God is not a solitary monarch ruling in isolation, but a father who has raised sons and daughters to reign with him. They are not bystanders to the throne's decisions, they are participants in its reign. When the Lamb takes the scroll, it is the elders who fall first in worship, each holding a harp and a golden bowl full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. They are intercessors, they are worshipers, they are kings and priests, not in symbol, but in reality. Their song declares a cosmic truth. You have redeemed us by your blood out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation, and have made us kings and priests to our God, and we shall reign on the earth. They sing of redemption not from distance but from experience. These elders are the first fruits of a greater harvest, the embodied prophecy of what the church shall become. In them we see what was promised in Genesis fulfilled in Revelation, that humanity, once cast from the presence of God, would one day be seated beside Him. They testify that Eden was not lost forever, but transfigured through the cross into something even greater. Where once man was barred from the tree of life, now he reigns near the river of life. Where once thorns crowned his brow, now crowns of gold rest upon redeemed heads. The elders prove that heaven is not a realm of disembodied spirits floating in endless song. It is a kingdom, it is a court, it is a family restored. And these 24 thrones are the evidence that God's government includes his people. But this raises a deeper mystery. For if they are seated, then their work is done. If they wear crowns, then they have overcome. If they worship, it is from a place not of striving, but of union. How did they arrive there? Who lifted them from dust to dominion? Only one answer echoes from their silence: the Lamb. Their robes were not white because they were pure, but because they were washed. Their crowns were not forged by their own fire, but given by the one who wore thorns in their place. They sit because he stood. They reign because he was slain. Their thrones encircle his as a ring encircles a jewel, not to rival, but to reflect. This is the throne room's greatest secret. It is not a cold chamber of divine detachment, but a sanctuary of covenant fulfilled, and the elders are its living pillars. Every time they bow, the church is reminded that glory lies not in ascent, but in surrender. Every time they rise, the redeemed are reminded that grace not only forgives, but enthrones. These elders are not myth. They are destiny. They are what awaits the faithful. They are the first echoes of what Paul called the hope of glory, Christ in us, fully realized. And they are not finished, for when judgment falls, they fall again in worship. When the Lamb opens the scroll, they fall. When the multitude sings, they fall. Their crowns are never truly on their heads because their praise never ceases. They model what eternal life looks like, unending worship fueled by unending wonder. Yet they also model what earthly life should pursue: a faith that overcomes, a heart that worships, a soul that reigns by kneeling. And so they sit, silent, crowned, and radiant, encircling the throne, not as statues of history, but as the testimony of what grace can build from dust. They are the redeemed in fullness, the church in glory, the proof that God finishes what he begins. And around them, the throne still burns, the creatures still cry, the lightning still strikes, but in the midst of it all, the elders remain, not shaken, not hidden, but enthroned. This is the promise of the throne room, that the story of redemption does not end with forgiveness. It ends with coronation. Nearest to the throne, closer than the elders, and nearer than the angels, stand 4 living beings, terrifying in glory, thunderous in voice, and saturated in eyes that see in every direction. They are called living creatures, not because they breathe, but because they embody life itself. Life as God speaks it, shapes it, sustains it. John, in his Revelation, trembles as he records them. The first like a lion, the second like an ox, the third with the face of a man, and the fourth like a flying eagle. Each of them has 6 wings, and they are covered with eyes, within, without, above, beneath. These are not symbolic animals to inspire awe or fear. They are not mythological guardians, nor hybrid monsters. They are living declarations of the divine essence, a chorus of the Creator's attributes embedded into the very geometry of the throne. The lion, king of the wild, proclaims God's majesty and sovereign rule. The ox, laborer of the field, proclaims his enduring strength and servant heart. The man, pinnacle of creation, proclaims God's wisdom, reason, and capacity for relationship. The eagle, soaring above all others, proclaims his transcendence, vision, and heavenly dominion. Together, they encircle the totality of divine nature: king, servant, image-bearer, and spirit. These 4 are not parts of God, but reflections of what he manifests in creation. They are the voices of creation turned heavenward, proclaiming what the rocks would cry if given breath, what the trees would whisper if granted tongues, what the skies would shout if clothed in speech. Their eyes, uncountable and unblinking, see every glory, every nuance, every unfolding layer of holiness that radiates from the one seated upon the throne. They cry, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." Not once, not twice, but forever. For each new instant reveals another depth of holiness, too overwhelming to hold in silence. Their worship is not a routine, it is a reflex. not composed, but combusted. They cannot not cry. Every revelation of the throne demands a response, and their cry is the response of all creation distilled into 4 voices. Their wings do not merely fly, they cover. With 2, they cover their faces in reverence. With 2, they cover their feet in humility. With 2, they fly in obedience. They are not worship leaders, they are worship itself. Their entire being is a posture, of vision, of submission, of flight toward the throne. And what they see compels them to never stop. They do not rest. They do not tire, because the holiness they behold is infinite, unfolding, unending. These are the beings Ezekiel saw, though described with even greater detail. There, the 4 faces do not belong to 4 separate creatures, but to one. Each being bears all 4 faces: lion, ox, man, and eagle, each one complete, each one balanced. This reveals a greater mystery, that the image of God is not divided among them, but fully revealed in each. They move straight ahead, each in the direction of their face, guided not by instinct, but by spirit. They turn only when the throne turns. They go only when the glory goes. They do not initiate, they respond. Their sound, when they move, is like the roar of many waters, like the tumult of an army, like the shout of justice shaking the veil between worlds. They are the thunder before the throne's decree, the breath of command before creation shifts. Covered in eyes burning with fire, these creatures represent not only worship, but awareness. They see the smallest sin and the grandest glory. They are the watchers of the holy, the sentinels of purity. They are as much flame as they are form, fusing perception with praise, gaze with groaning. When John sees them, he does not name them, for they are beyond naming. They are not like anything else. They are first. They are foundational. They are as ancient as the throne, and yet as new as the voice that speaks from it. And when they cry, "Holy," they ignite a chain reaction. The elders fall. The crowns drop. The thrones shake. All of heaven aligns around their proclamation. For their cry is the tuning fork of heaven. When they speak, everything finds its key. All worship begins with their word, and all creation echoes what they declare. Yet in all their greatness, they do not glorify themselves. They turn all eyes, whether angelic, human, or celestial, toward the one on the throne. They are not the object of awe, but the vessel through which awe is born. Their presence near the throne reveals that God's holiness is not hidden, but heralded, that His majesty is not distant, but displayed, that the throne is not silent, but surrounded by living voices carved from light and fire. These creatures are the true heart of worship, not because they sing songs, but because they embody surrender, not because they are beautiful, but because they are always looking. Worship is not melody, it is sight. To see God rightly is to worship Him unceasingly. And these creatures never blink, never close their eyes, never grow dull to the radiance before them. Their eternity is fixed in revelation. Each new glimpse of His glory ignites an old cry made new again, and the cry never loses its power, for holiness is never exhausted, and God is never finished being God. What these beings proclaim, the universe was made to echo. When creation moans in birth pangs, it echoes their cry. When lightning strikes and mountains tremble, it echoes their cry. When sinners weep and saints rejoice, it echoes their cry. Holy, holy, holy. They are the living architecture of heaven's praise, the scaffolding of eternal adoration, the first voice and the last. And in them we see that heaven is not a passive vision of clouds and silence, but a realm saturated with motion, thunder, color, fire, and sound. Their wings never rest, their eyes never close, their cry never ends, because the throne never dims, and the one who sits upon it is always more glorious than he was the moment before. These are the living creatures, the lion, the ox, the man, the eagle, standing forever near the throne, not as reminders of creation's origin, but as witnesses to its creator. Beneath the creatures, beneath the wings, beneath even the firmament that supports the sapphire throne, Ezekiel sees something stranger still. Wheels. Not simple circles, not bronze mechanisms nor symbolic ornaments, but wheels within wheels, turning in every direction without turning at all. They burn like chrysolite, glowing with a fire that does not consume but reveals, and along their rims are eyes, unblinking, innumerable, all-seeing. They are called ophanim, a word that means wheels, but also cycles, spheres, turnings. But these are no lifeless gears in some heavenly machine. They are alive, conscious, responsive, and filled with the very breath of the Spirit. Ezekiel writes that the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels, meaning they are not separate from the movement of heaven, but are the conduits of that movement. When the creatures rise, the wheels rise. When the creatures stand still, the wheels do not turn aside. When the glory moves, the ophanim obey without question, for the order of heaven has no delay, no hesitation, no resistance. These wheels are not bound by the geometry of earth. One wheel is inside another, moving as one yet each independent. Forward, backward, side to side. They do not pivot, because in the throne room, direction is not linear. There is no forward or behind, no left or right. The throne rides in every direction at once. It is omnipresent in motion because it is omnipotent in essence. The ophanim carry this truth not in speech but in shape. They are the visible language of divine mobility, revealing that the throne of God is never idle. It advances, it adjusts, it appears, it judges, it redeems. It does not rest upon foundations of stone, but on living watchers who never sleep. Their eyes, innumerable and inescapable, are not ornamental but judicial. They are vision itself. They scan realms, they pierce intentions, they observe both the seen and the hidden, both the outer world and the inner soul. There is no shadow deep enough to hide from them, no depth dark enough to conceal. They see kingdoms rise and fall. They watch over the unfolding of decrees. They are the eyes of heaven's court, gazing upon history as it bends toward fulfillment. And they are not passive. The eyes judge, the eyes record, the eyes respond. These wheels, these blazing sentinels, are not furniture beneath the throne. They are the foundation of its forward motion, and in them we see a mystery deeper than fire and more ancient than time, that God's throne is not fixed to one place or one age. It was never bound to the temple in Jerusalem. It does not dwell only in Revelation's crystal sea. It moves. It has always moved. It came down to Sinai. It filled the tabernacle. It entered the temple. It overshadowed Mary. It stood beside Stephen as he was martyred. It fell at Pentecost in tongues of fire. The throne of God does not wait for men to ascend. It descends in justice, in mercy, in glory, and in judgment. And wherever it moves, the ophanim blaze before it. They are the wheels of divine intervention, the axis upon which every age turns. The Book of Enoch, preserved in ancient Jewish tradition, expands this vision, calling the ophanim the many-eyed ones, and declaring that they stand continually before the throne of the Lord of Spirits, their eyes never closing, their movement never ceasing, for the glory of the Most High never rests. The throne of God is not like the thrones of kings. It does not sit in waiting, demanding subjects to approach. It rides through realms, seeing all, commanding all, adjusting the course of creation without delay. And this movement is not chaotic. It is orchestral. The ophanim move in sync with the cherubim above them. The cherubim move with the firmament. The firmament follows the throne. The throne responds to the one who sits upon it, and he moves only by the Spirit. The Spirit does not push, it indwells. It is the Spirit who animates the wheels. It is the Spirit who orders their path. It is the Spirit who ensures that every turn fulfills a purpose, every rotation completes a decree, every movement sustains the balance between realms. When Ezekiel describes them, he notes that the sound of their motion is like the roar of many waters, like the voice of the Almighty, not just a sound, but His sound. These wheels do not whisper, they thunder. Their motion is a proclamation that the King of Glory is active, and His glory is not passive light, but devouring fire. These wheels speak in motion. Their every rotation is a testimony. The Lord reigns, the Lord sees, the Lord moves. Their turning is the rhythm of providence. Their eyes are the instruments of justice. Their presence is the structure of all heavenly authority. When they move, the heavens listen. When they rise, the earth responds. When they stand, the spiritual realm holds its breath. They do not move of their own accord. They do not choose direction. They are not agents of chaos, but of command, and herein lies the truth they reveal. God's sovereignty is not stationary. His rule does not sit on clouds. It rides through storms, it enters deserts, it arrives in dreams, it blazes through valleys. The Ophanim are the proof that the glory of God is not trapped in temples or pages or rituals. It is alive, it is near, it is watching, it is coming. And one day, when the final judgment is announced and the scroll is unsealed, the wheels will turn once more, not in warning, but in fulfillment. Their eyes will see the end of injustice. Their fire will blaze through the final veil, and the throne they carry will descend to make all things new. These are the wheels of fire, the eyes of judgment, and they are turning even now. Before the throne, like the breath held between thunderclaps, lies a sea, glassy, still, unbroken. It is not water that ripples, nor waves that crash. It does not roll with the wind, nor reflect the skies of passing seasons. It is a sea of glass, as clear as crystal, as vast as eternity, and as unchanging as the one who sits upon the throne. John sees it in his Revelation, stretching out before the throne like a sacred mirror, its surface unshaken by the thunder that rumbles behind it or the fire that blazes above it. It is untouched because it cannot be touched. It is not a sea to be crossed. It is not a sea to be sailed. It is a sea to be seen, a surface that does not shimmer with illusion, but with truth. In this sea, there is no distortion. What stands before it is what appears within it. Every crown, every creature, every elder, every eye is reflected back with perfect clarity. It is the mirror of heaven, not held in hand, but laid at the feet of glory. Its stillness is not silence, but judgment. Its transparency is not emptiness, but revelation. It is what the priests of old approached, but never crossed. It is what the temple veil echoed, a separation not of space, but of purity. In the tabernacle, there was a bronze basin called the laver, filled with water where the priests would wash before entering the presence. But here, the sea is not for washing, it is for revealing. It does not cleanse the outer man. It exposes the inner one. It is the final witness before the throne, the last thing seen before standing face to face with fire. For nothing passes its edge without being seen, weighed, and known. The sea of glass is the threshold between glory and judgment. It reflects not only faces but motives, not only garments but hearts. It is the heavenly counterpart of the crystal firmament Ezekiel saw stretched above the living creatures. There, it bore the weight of the throne. Here, it bears the gaze of the king. And under it, nothing hides. The sea of glass is not calm because it is dead. It is calm because it is absolute. In its depths, there is no lie, no mask, no performance. It is the final unveiling, the place where appearance dies and only essence remains. When the creatures cry, "Holy," the sea echoes not in sound, but in reflection. When the elders cast their crowns, the sea displays the act in perfection. It is the eternal record of the throne room, an ever-present reminder that no movement, no gesture, no word escapes the vision of the one who reigns. But this sea is not cold. It does not separate with indifference. It burns with a kind of silent fire, the fire of total knowledge, total justice, total transparency. For Revelation does not only describe it as glass, later it becomes mingled with fire, and those who overcome the beast and his image stand beside it, victorious. This detail is not accidental. The sea is not always still. It becomes a place of triumph, where the faithful stand not in fear, but in worship, harps in hand, singing the song of Moses and the Lamb. What was once a barrier becomes a witness. What once separated now celebrates. The glass becomes flame. The mirror becomes music. Yet even in its joy, it remains unbreakable. For this sea is not of earth, It is not formed of water or sand or tide. It is a sea from beyond creation, forged in the silence before time, placed between throne and creation as a line no unrighteous thing can cross. It is the spiritual Jordan, the heavenly Red Sea, not for escape, but for exposure. And just as the sea once parted for Moses and closed upon Pharaoh, so too will this sea yield only to those washed in the blood of the Lamb and close to all else. The sea of glass reveals a terrifying truth, that the throne is not hidden, and therefore neither are we. That worship is not a song sung in darkness, but a posture held in light. That the God who reigns does not judge by appearances, but by what the sea reveals. Its surface is smooth, but its purpose is sharp. It divides the holy from the profane, not by decree, but by reflection. It does not need to speak. It only needs to shine, and all truth becomes visible. There is no manipulation here, no fig leaves, no eloquent speeches, only light upon light, clarity upon clarity. Every tear is seen, every sacrifice is recorded, every secret sin is laid bare. The sea remembers, the sea reflects, and yet, in its terrifying transparency, there is mercy. For before the Lamb opens the seals, before the judgments thunder forth, this sea stands still, offering one last chance to see ourselves as heaven sees us. One last glimpse of what the throne sees before the scroll is read. And if one is willing to look, to really look, the sea becomes not condemnation, but invitation. An invitation to step into the fire that refines instead of consumes, to enter not as a thief but as a child, to be reflected not in shame but in glory. For those who are in Christ, the sea no longer reflects condemnation, it reflects transformation. The image is no longer Adam's fallen dust, but the Lamb's risen light. The mirror no longer shows a rebel, it shows a son. And thus, the sea becomes our testimony. The place where we lay down pretense and pick up truth, where we stop hiding and start worshiping, where the reflection becomes worship and the exposure becomes freedom. For in the sea of glass we are finally seen and still loved, known and still invited, judged and still redeemed. The sea does not move, but it calls. It calls to every soul who would draw near to the throne. It says, "You cannot pass in shadow, only in light." It says, "You cannot bring your masks, only your wounds." It says, "What you truly are will be revealed, and if the Lamb stands for you, you have nothing to fear." This is the sea of glass, the mirror of eternity. And it reflects not only what we are, but what He has made us to be. Blazing before the throne, in the space between the sea of glass and the fire-wreathed throne itself, stand 7 lamps, torches not flickering but roaring, eternal flames that never diminish, never dim, and never go out. John, in Tadifo, his revelation, calls them the 7 spirits of God, a title strange to the ear but sacred in its meaning. These are not 7 gods nor 7 separate beings, but 7-fold flames of a single spirit, the fullness of the Holy Spirit, complete and indivisible, burning in eternal unity. This vision echoes Isaiah's ancient prophecy, where the Spirit of the Lord is described not in singularity, but in 7 manifestations: the spirit of wisdom, understanding, counsel, might, knowledge, the fear of the Lord, and delight in the fear of the Lord. These are not attributes like labels on a scroll. They are living flames, dimensions of divine presence poured out before the throne, declaring that governance from this place is not detached, impersonal, or cold, but radiant, personal, and perfectly wise. Just as the golden menorah once stood in the holy place of the earthly tabernacle, casting light upon the bread of the presence and illuminating the veil of separation, so now these heavenly flames light the courts of the true tabernacle in heaven, revealing not shadows, but substance, not rituals, but the radiant face of God. The throne does not rule in silence. It breathes, it sees, it moves with purpose. These flames are not for ceremony, they are for revelation. They light the path of judgment. They ignite the voice of prophecy. They burn within the heart of the Lamb and upon the wings of the cherubim. When God speaks, it is these flames that carry the heat of His word. When God sees, it is through their light that all is understood. When God judges, it is through their illumination that no deceit can survive. Each flame declares something eternal. The flame of wisdom burns with eternal strategy, declaring that the throne never guesses and never reacts. The flame of understanding glows with depth, showing that the one who reigns sees through every layer of intent and history. The flame of counsel burns with purpose, revealing that every decree that goes forth is not random, but rooted in plan. The flame of might blazes with power, the same spirit that raised Christ from the dead and split seas now blazing before the throne in unrelenting authority. The flame of knowledge shimmers with omniscience. There is nothing hidden from its gaze, nothing unknown in its presence. The flame of the fear of the Lord flickers with holy awe, for no being, even the most glorious, can stand before the throne without trembling. And the final flame, the spirit of delight in the fear of the Lord, burns with intimacy, reminding all creation that holiness is not burden, but joy, not dread, but wonder. Together, these 7 flames are the living presence of the Spirit who hovered over the waters in Genesis, who spoke through the prophets, who descended upon the Son at baptism, who fell like fire at Pentecost, and who now burns without ceasing in the highest heaven. These flames are not still. They flicker with intent. They move with rhythm. They lean toward the Lamb, illuminating the scroll in his hand, waiting to ignite the decrees that will shake the world. They are alive, and where they burn, nothing remains the same. No lie survives, no darkness endures, no ignorance can hide. Their light penetrates galaxies, their warmth convicts hearts, their heat consumes impurity. These are the torches that light the path of angels, that reveal the steps of the righteous, that awaken the slumbering, that guide the pen of prophets and the tears of intercessors. This is why the throne does not reign in silence. It is not frozen in majesty. It is alive with breath and blaze, with motion and mercy. The flames declare that divine rule is not robotic or mechanical. It is spiritual and personal. Every law that flows from the throne is infused with wisdom. Every judgment is immersed in understanding. Every command is bathed in counsel. Every act is backed by might. Every silence is filled with knowledge. Every delay is tempered with fear of the Lord. And every revelation is crowned with the joy of holy surrender. The 7 spirits burn because the Spirit of God is never idle. They are the visible testimony that the Holy Spirit is not an afterthought to the Father and the Son, but burns eternally at the heart of the throne itself. Before man was formed, these flames burned. Before angels flew, these flames blazed. Before mountains were set and stars took their place, these flames danced before the eyes of the Eternal. They are not new. They are not added. They are the ancient fire that fuels every divine act from creation to new creation. And what they light, they also ignite. It is through these flames that the hearts of men are set ablaze, that prophets tremble and speak, that martyrs sing in fire, that truth pierces the veil of deception. It was this same Spirit that hovered over chaos and brought forth light, this same Spirit that anointed kings and whispered to widows, this same Spirit that overshadowed Mary and descended like a dove, this same Spirit that filled Christ without measure and now stands before the throne, not diminished, but multiplied in eternal fire. And he is not content to burn in heaven alone. The flames that roar before the throne are the same flames that rest upon the faithful. They burn in the hearts of those who wait. They burn in the words of those who testify. They burn in the hands of those who heal, in the feet of those who go, in the cries of those who intercede. The Spirit of flame is not distant, he is near. He does not merely witness the throne, he brings its fire to earth. And so these 7 torches blaze, not as symbols but as summons, a call to burn as they burn, a call to see as they see, a call to know the throne not only as sovereign but as sacred. For where the Spirit is, there is not only freedom, there is fire. And before the throne of God, that fire never goes out. From the center of the throne, beyond the blaze of the 7 spirits and the reflection of the sea of Glass erupts a sound unlike anything in creation, a voice wrapped in thunder, clothed in lightning, vibrating through every realm and dimension with unbearable clarity. John hears it, and it is not gentle. It is not still. It is the same voice that once shook Mount Sinai, where thick darkness fell upon trembling earth, where fire and smoke cloaked a mountain that bled with holiness. Then the people begged Moses to speak for them, for the voice was too terrible, too pure, too alive. Now that same voice reverberates in heaven's throne room, not diminished, but exalted. Lightning flashes not as atmospheric spectacle, but as spoken decree. Thunder rolls not as a natural occurrence, but as divine proclamation. Every sound is a verdict. Every flash is a judgment. Every rumble is a command echoing from the mouth of the Almighty. This is not a symbolic storm. It is the living sound of rulership. The voice that called galaxies into being with a word now governs them with the same breath. The throne does not murmur, it thunders. It does not suggest, it commands. And creation, from the smallest atom to the largest star, responds instantly. This is the voice that shattered the idols of Egypt, the voice that cracked the walls of Jericho, the voice that thundered over the waters in the Psalms, the voice that silenced the wind and waves in Galilee, and the voice that cried, "It is finished," before the earth shook and the veil tore. It is the voice of final authority. It is the voice from which no one escapes. In Hebrews, we read that once God's voice shook the earth, but now he promises, "Yet once more, I will shake not only the earth but also the heavens." This is the shaking John hears. The voice is not angry, it is absolute. It is the governance of eternity in audible form, and what it speaks becomes law, not by passing legislation, but by speaking reality into shape. The throne is not a passive seat, it is the control center of all things. History does not drift, it is directed. Time does not unfold randomly, it is spoken into motion by the throne's decree. Every kingdom that rises, every tyrant that falls, every war that begins or ends, every revival that breaks forth, begins with this sound. Every prophetic trumpet that will be blown, every seal that will be opened, every bowl that will be poured in Revelation begins not with angelic initiative, but with the voice from the throne. That voice sends angels to flight. That voice gives thunder its reason. That voice calls the dead from tombs and casts the serpent into fire, and that voice still speaks. It speaks when scripture is read. It speaks when truth is declared. It speaks when prayers rise and worship ascends. And when that voice speaks, all creation trembles. Mountains melt like wax, seas part, devils flee, and saints fall to their knees. The heavens are not silent, they are resonating, and the epicenter of that sound is the throne. Before we continue, if this content has blessed your life, like, comment, and share. Subscribe to the channel, and if you would like to bless the channel, click the Super Thanks button and leave an offering of any amount or become a member. That way, we can continue investing in research and improvements to bless your life even more. Now, let us return to the mystery that has echoed since eternity. The throne's voice is not confined to the future. It is spoken from the beginning. "Let there be light" was not an idea, it was a decree, and light obeyed. "Let the waters part" was not a command to Moses, it was the voice of the throne roaring through his staff. "You are my son" was not spoken for Christ alone, it was the throne's eternal proclamation over the Lamb who was slain before the foundation of the world. This voice is the true force behind history. Empires may boast of conquest, rulers may claim authority, but behind every shift in human power is a voice no army can withstand. The throne shakes not only kingdoms, it shakes hearts. It calls prophets from caves, apostles from boats, martyrs from prisons. It does not shout to impress, it speaks to transform. The voice from the throne does not flatter, it reveals. It does not argue, it declares. It does not waver, it stands. And every soul, whether in defiance or surrender, will one day hear it for themselves. When Jesus said, "My sheep know my voice," he wasn't referencing a soft whisper in the dark. He was referring to a voice that resonates deep into the marrow, a sound that breaks chains and heals wounds, a voice that awakens the dead and silences every lie. The voice from the throne is not an echo, it is the origin. It is not a response, it is the initiation. Nothing begins without it, nothing continues apart from it, and nothing ends until it says so. The thunder and lightning are not chaos, they are cadence. They are the rhythm of divine governance, announcing that heaven is not a quiet chamber, but a royal court of ceaseless motion and intentional rule. And in the end, when all scrolls are unrolled, when every trumpet is sounded, when every bowl has been poured, that voice will speak one final time. Not with a whisper, not with thunder alone, but with a word so powerful that every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. That word will be the last. That word will remake the heavens and the earth. That word will silence death and begin eternity. And even then, the voice will not grow quiet. It will continue forever, reigning, revealing, restoring. For the throne does not rule in silence. It reigns in sound. And the sound shakes all things, so that only what cannot be shaken may remain. At the very heart of the throne, in the blazing midst of fire and sea, lightning and thunder, elders and angels, stands a figure that should not be there, and yet must be there. A lamb, not pristine and white, not majestic in the way men expect power to appear, but wounded, as though slain. Not a corpse, but not untouched by death. This lamb bears the marks of crucifixion, the scars of sacrifice, the memory of agony etched into eternal flesh. And yet he stands, he lives, he reigns. John does not say the Lamb approaches the throne. He does not say the Lamb is beneath it or beside it. He says the Lamb is in the midst of the throne, occupying the very center of divine authority, not as an accessory to glory, but as its source. And as he appears, the atmosphere of heaven changes, the thunder stills, the lightning pauses. The living creatures who have cried, "Holy, holy, holy," without rest, cease their cry. The elders who have cast their crowns and bowed in rhythm fall silent. The millions upon millions of angels who circle the throne hold their breath. All of creation waits, because the scroll is in the right hand of the one who sits on the throne, a scroll sealed with 7 seals, the final testament of judgment, history, and redemption. And none, not in heaven or on earth or under the earth, is found worthy to open it. None but one. The Lamb steps forward, not forced, not summoned, but worthy. He takes the scroll, not as a subject receiving command, but as the rightful heir assuming dominion. And as he takes it, heaven explodes, worship ignites, harps are strummed, bowls of incense, prayers of saints are offered. A new song arises, a song that has never been sung before. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and praise. The throne room that once thundered with the holiness of God now roars with the worthiness of the Lamb. And in this moment, the deepest secret of eternity is revealed, that the one who rules does so not by conquest, but by crucifixion, not by domination, but by surrender. The throne of God is not built on golden pillars or cosmic force. It is founded on wounds. Its scepter is a pierced hand. Its foundation is a cross. Its power is blood willingly spilled. This Lamb is not a contradiction to glory. He is its fulfillment. The wounds do not disqualify him. They enthrone him. The blood does not shame him. It crowns him. The love that held him to the tree now upholds all creation. And this is the mystery, that in the throne room of eternity, the highest authority flows not from power alone, but from sacrifice. The Lamb governs by giving. His dominion is not enforced, it is embraced. His rule is not tyranny, it is testimony. The Lamb is not a temporary image of redemption. He is the eternal King of kings, ruling with a heart that still bears the marks of our salvation. And when he reigns, he does so with the memory of Gethsemane in his eyes, with the voice of "Father, forgive them," still echoing from his mouth, with the silence of the tomb behind him and the resurrection roaring through his every breath. He does not rule in revenge, he rules in restoration. He is the Lion of Judah, but he comes first as the Lamb that was slain. And in this paradox lies the throne's greatest power. The greatest threat to the enemy was not fire, it was forgiveness. The greatest weapon against death was not force, it was love. The Lamb rules because he laid himself down, he reigns because he refused to retaliate. He governs not from a place of vengeance, but from a place of victory through surrender. And all of heaven understands this. That is why the angels sing. That is why the elders fall. That is why the living creatures, who never stop crying, "Holy," now bow before the one who was pierced. Because the Lamb is holy, not only in being, but in action. He is holy in motive, holy in mercy, holy in meekness, holy in majesty. He does not need to prove himself. The scars are proof enough. And in this Lamb, the throne room becomes not merely a place of judgment, but a place of redemption. Not merely a seat of justice, but a fountain of grace. The Lamb stands in the midst of the throne, and from this place he will open the scroll. He will break the seals. He will unleash the final waves of history, not in wrath alone, but in righteous judgment. He alone can do it, because he alone has paid the price to redeem what was lost. Every decree he makes is soaked in the blood he shed. Every act he initiates is filtered through the heart that broke for humanity. He does not wield justice blindly. He rules as one who has suffered. The scroll is not opened by a tyrant. It is opened by a Lamb who gave everything to redeem the names written within. This is the Lamb who still intercedes, who still invites, who still calls, who still longs for the prodigal to return before the final seal is broken. And so the Lamb in the center becomes the center of all hope, the anchor of all worship, the pulse of heaven itself. Around him, everything else aligns. Without him, even the throne would be silent. But with him, the throne burns with meaning, purpose, and power. And this is the throne we are invited to behold, not guarded by fire alone, but opened by a Lamb who bears our name on his heart. A throne that does not intimidate us into submission, but draws us into surrender. Because in the center of eternity, at the heart of all judgment, in the very fire of divine glory, there stands not a God of distant wrath, but a Lamb, with scars that shine brighter than stars. The throne room, ablaze with worship, radiant with the glory of the Lamb, does not exist for spectacle alone. It is also the cosmic courtroom, the axis of all justice, where history is weighed and destinies are decided. From this throne come the decrees that shape worlds and the verdicts that determine the fate of angels and men alike. Here, worship does not drown out justice, it prepares the ground for it. When the Lamb takes the scroll and begins to break its 7 seals, silence fills heaven, a silence more terrible than thunder, because it is the stillness before the storm of judgment. The first seal is broken, and a rider is unleashed. White horse, conquering. Another seal, and a red horse, war. A third, a black horse, famine. A fourth, a pale horse, death. Each decree does not arise from caprice, but from the foreordained justice of the throne. These are not mythic omens. They are the final accounting of evil on earth, unleashed not by accident, but by necessity. Angels stand as witnesses, recording every act. Trumpets sound, and each blast is the voice of God thundering judgment, warning and awakening the earth. Bowls are poured out, each a cup of wrath reserved not for the innocent, but for the rebellious, for those who have trampled mercy beneath their feet. The courtroom is filled with living creatures who watch, elders who pray, myriads of angels who serve, and the prayers of saints rise as incense, interceding for mercy in the midst of judgment. Nothing escapes this court, not the schemes of kings, not the rise of empires, not the blasphemies of beasts, not the tears of the oppressed, not the silent suffering of the innocent. Every act is seen, every motive is measured, every secret is brought to light, yet the justice that falls from the throne is never rushed. It is deliberate, patient, measured by the very heart of the Lamb. For before every trumpet sounds, there is silence. Before every bowl is poured, there is waiting. Before every seal is broken, there is intercession. The throne delays, not because it is weak, but because it is merciful. The The heart of the Lamb still beats at the center of judgment, longing that none should perish, offering redemption even as the verdict draws near. Prophets of old saw this day from afar, Daniel, Ezekiel, Isaiah, describing courts seated, books opened, thrones set in place, and rivers of fire flowing before the Ancient of Days. Yet all their visions converge in this single moment. Justice rolling down like mighty waters, righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Here, the great and the small stand equal. The rulers of earth are summoned, the oppressed are vindicated, and every beast that once rose from the abyss is unmasked and overthrown. The courtroom of heaven is not a place of endless delay, but neither is it hasty in wrath. The patience of the throne is not passivity. It is mercy giving room for repentance, for every soul to choose life while the Lamb still stands with outstretched arms. But the scroll has an end. The final seal must be broken. The courtroom drama builds toward its last verdict, the climactic moment when all that is hidden is revealed, all that is crooked is made straight, and every knee bows before the judge, whose wounds plead for mercy and whose word demands justice. In this cosmic court, no bribes can be offered, no arguments can be spun, no excuses can be hidden in darkness. The eyes of the living creatures see through every facade, the flames of the Spirit test every work, the sea of glass reflects every secret. But even as judgment falls, the Lamb remembers mercy. The same hand that opens the scroll is the hand that was pierced for the guilty. The same throne that shatters the nations is the throne that calls the weary home. And so, in the tension of justice and mercy, of thunder and silence, of judgment and invitation, the story of creation moves to its appointed end, not with the chaos of wrath, but with the righteousness of a king who reigns not only with power, but with love that has been tested in fire. The courtroom is not a place to dread, but the hope of all who hunger for a world made right. And as the final seal is broken, as the books are closed, as the sentence is read and the cosmos holds its breath, the Lamb remains at the center, proof that justice and mercy can meet, that wrath and redemption can kiss, and that the one who judges is the same who saves. This is the cosmic courtroom, the throne room of judgment and hope, where every chapter of history is read, every tear is counted, every injustice is overturned, and the kingdom of God emerges unshakable and eternal from the fire of His holiness. When all the seals are broken and the scroll is finished, when judgment is complete and every tear wiped away, the throne room is seen again. But now it is no longer shrouded in fire and thunder, nor hidden behind glassy seas or blazing creatures. John beholds the final vision, a new heaven and a new earth, radiant with a light that does not fade, where the holy city, the New Jerusalem, descends out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And at its very center, unmissable and unmistakable, is the throne, not distant, not veiled, not guarded by cherubim or separated by seas, but standing open in the midst of the redeemed. The voice that once shook Sinai now speaks with the gentleness of fulfilled promise. Behold, the dwelling of God is with man. No more separation, no more waiting, no more longing. The geography of God's presence has shifted for the last time, not away from heaven, but toward earth, toward us, fulfilling the desire that thundered in Eden and echoed through prophets and priests and kings. The sea of glass is gone. There is no longer any barrier between the Creator and His creation. The river of life flows, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God and of the Lamb, watering the tree of life, whose leaves are for the healing of the nations. The gates are never shut. The city needs no sun nor moon, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. Here, every promise finds its yes and amen. Here, the elders no longer cast their crowns. They walk among the people they once represented. Here, the living creatures sing with the redeemed in a chorus that will never end. Holy, holy, holy. Not as a distant refrain, but as the anthem of a family restored. The river of life washes away every memory of sorrow. Death itself is abolished. Grief and pain are forever past. The throne has moved for the last time. It has arrived, settled, dwelt. The tabernacle of God is now with men, and he will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. There is no more temple, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. No more need for intercessors, for the Lamb himself walks among his children, his wounds now radiant, his voice now gentle. The geography of heaven and earth is erased. The Holy of Holies is open to all who are written in the Lamb's book of life. The city's foundations bear the names of the apostles. Its gates are inscribed with the tribes of Israel. All history is gathered in this place, all division undone, all exile ended. The journey of the throne, the chariot that blazed through the cosmos, the courtroom that judged the nations, the altar of mercy and the source of law, finds its home, not in distant glory, but in the midst of a people loved and redeemed. This is why the throne moved. This is why the wheels turned, the eyes watched, the flames burned, the Lamb was slain, so that God and humanity could dwell together forever, face to face, heart to heart, with nothing left hidden, nothing left to fear. The greatest mystery is now revealed. The geography of God's dwelling ends where it always intended, to be with his people forever. And as the river flows and the city shines, eternity begins not as an endless span of time, but as the fullness of communion, the fulfillment of every longing, the answer to every prayer. The throne no longer needs to move. It has found its rest, and so have we. Behold, he makes all things new.